And now to tell the Donald Duck story, here is your host, Walt Disney.
This modest, unassuming young fellow joined our family quite a few years back. And the way he has been accepted all over the world makes us proud to tell his story.
In the 1939 cartoon, The Autograph Hound, Donald Duck tries to crash a Hollywood studio to collect the signatures of his favorite stars, including Mickey Rooney and little Shirley Temple. But it turns out that Donald is the biggest star of all.
No, I got you!
You leave him alone. He's Donald Duck.
Donald Duck? Did you say Donald Duck?
Donald Duck?
When you come to think about it, Donald had a career as varied and impressive as any Hollywood star of that golden age. And he appeared in more feature films than any other Disney character. Donald Duck, movie star. Donald Duck really was a movie star, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, not only was he the star of many, many short subjects, I mean, he stole the show from Mickey in the 30s. And by the 40s, Disney was using him in feature films. People don't realize that Donald is in more Disney feature films than Mickey Mouse.
I think Mickey was probably more famous, but Donald had a bigger following.
How highly did Walt value Donald Duck?
Walt called Donald the Gable of our stable, referring to Clark Gable was the biggest star on the MGM lot, so on the Disney lot it was Donald Duck.
They could be a little less reverent with him than with some of their other characters.
As Mickey's popularity gained in the 30s, he was such the symbol of the Disney company that they couldn't have him do certain things. He couldn't be quite the bad boy that he was in the late 20s and early 30s. And that really fell to Donald. Donald's character was perfect for that. You know, they introduced a character who had a temper, who could get mad, who could talk back, who could say things that Mickey couldn't say.
Oh, shut up.
And they could beat him up a lot, and nobody cared. Donald would just come right back. And there's a poignancy to it as well. Like, Donald can get knocked about, but then he's sort of an everyman. He's suffering, you know.
Donald really represented the average American with his frustrations.
I can't understand a word you say. Beat it.
What he felt about things, that was personified in Donald Duck's personality.
Some people have no respect for a hard-working man.
But I think that's what made him a star. He wasn't only a duck punching bag. He had that underlying quality of pathos and sadness to him.
And I find it interesting, too, that Donald is in Mother Goose Goes Hollywood. He actually makes a cameo appearance.
You want to buy a duck?
You want to buy a duck?
He really was a star in that sense. And like any star, you can sort of follow his career, the beginnings of his career, the detours, the highlights. There's that wonderful scene in The Reluctant Dragon where Robert Benchley wants to know how he makes the character move, and when he doesn't understand at first, Donald simply explains. And that's his cameo appearance in the film, but he makes a real impression.
Duck. I'll show you. I'll show you. Now look. First, my foot is up here. See?
Uh-huh.
Then, it's down here. Understand?
Oh, I get it.
And they used that sequence many times in other shows with different people taking the place of Benchley. But that's a great demonstration of animation done by Donald.
Clarence Nash made an appearance in the film as well, with Florence Gill quacking on camera. The way they set it up, where he was going to be an opera star and he was spraying that stuff from the back of his throat, and then he got up and started singing like Donald.
Let's talk about the South American films. Donald really plays a crucial role in both of the features and in the later appearance even in Blame It on the Samba. Can you talk about your impressions of him in that arena?
Yes, I'm an American tourist.
I think he was every man, and so in those two films, when we had a kind of a bond with South America because the war was on, you know, everyone could relate to him as an American tourist going down to explore South America.
I love the Watercolor Brazil sequence. I think that's a terrific little piece. It's real funny stuff with the llama in the Lake Titicaca, you know, where he's up on the suspension bridge. And it's like Donald hasn't read the script, you know, and he's up on the bridge and he breaks the fourth wall. He gets really mad at the narrator. He says, "Oh, shut up."
One should never lose one's temper.
Shut up! What?
And then, of course, he shares the screen first with Joe Carioca and then with Panchito as well. And they're very well matched, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, a lot of fun. There was a great chemistry between those characters. I mean, I'm talking about them like they were actors, like it was Clark Gable and Carole Lombard, but it was 3 cartoon characters that were drawn, but they did play off each other very well, as, you know, they were the hosts of Latin America, showing the American tourist the ropes.
He did some great stuff in the Lilongo dance with Carmen Molina, where Donald is trying to get the rhythm, and he's tapping his foot. At first he's mad.
Hey, Donald, you are what they say off the cuff. You know, corny.
And then he brightens up. You got it. And then he starts jitterbugging like crazy, and they can't get him to stop. Like the dance is over, and he's still jitterbugging. They have to kidnap him and put him on the magic serape to get him out of the scene. And that's very intricately done with the live action and animation mix.
He is quite a wolf, isn't he?
He is, yeah. And he's
a duck.
And I remember as a kid worrying about, what about Daisy? Because, you know, well, Daisy's back home, and what's he doing? You know, but he's a duck that's a wolf.
He did the big takes, and like he's on the Magic Serape. I think Ollie Johnston animated that sequence, and looking at all the bathing beauties, and they have to physically restrain him and keep him jump off the Magic Serape and all that. Yeah, yeah. Ward Kimball did in the Los Quindins de Allá sequence. He did the very first takes where he sees Aurora Miranda, and he does a great big reaction to her. That was, I think, a rear screen projection shot. But yeah, he was a really unsullied wolf in that.
Donald! Muito obrigado.
Donald, I guess, proved to be more versatile than maybe even Walt and the animators and storymen anticipated. Because at first, when you look at the earliest Donald Duck cartoons, it's just about anger, isn't it? It's just that squawk and that temper. But then they found other facets and other colors to Donald.
And it was a group effort between Clarence Nash, who was the original voice, Jack Hanna, who was doing the shorts at the time, and Walt. They all worked together. They didn't just do the story and then bring in Ducky to do the lines. And he would come in and look at the boards, and really, Donald is Jack Hanna and Clarence Nash. You know, Mickey's Walt. Clarence got better. You know, if you look at some of the really early 30s stuff, it's pretty unintelligible. But by the time he got to Three Caballeros, I think it's very clear.
What do you feel about my hair? Tell me the truth.
Oh, swell! Marvelous! Romance!
Mickey and the Beanstalk was actually in the works long before it finally turned up in the feature film called Fun and Fancy Free. It's a very funny, very entertaining little film. And Donald gets most of the laughs, doesn't he?
He's very effective in the poverty sequence, where they're dividing one bean, or you know, and making little tiny paper-thin slices of it. And he absolutely loses it. You know, he's starving so much that he goes wild.
Shut up! I can't stand it!
In spite of that cartooniness, in that hunger scene, he's really acting.
And I think, again, it's because of what I was talking about with that underlying pathetic quality that he has. He's not just a slapstick comic. We identify with him because he suffers. And every once in a while, he takes that suffering seriously on himself.
That's bullshit. That's old cows around it.
When I was a kid, I always loved the idea that Walt interacted with Donald so often on the hour-long TV show. Donald would be in Walt's office. He's running around his desk. It's really cool stuff.
It really is. Like A Day in the Life of Donald was, I think, the most elaborate one they ever did, because that just shows Donald's life at the studio, coming to work in the morning, driving his car recklessly over the LA freeways because he has a cartoon license. And then they show his office, and Ducky Nash comes in.
Boy, what a beautiful day for the little creatures.
What's good about it?
Why, the birds are singing.
Meets the Mouseketeers, does a lot of intricate live-action animation interrelating, like they even put a little set of mouse ears on his head.
We would like to make you an honorary member of the Mouseketeers.
Thank you, fellas.
Very expensive stuff, and very well done.
And all that animation was being done by the animators who had worked with Donald a lot in the short subjects.
Yeah, the shorts guys, Al Coe and Bob Carlson, people like that.
Okay, Don, follow me. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Donald's had sort of a second movie career since the 80s.
Mickey's Christmas Carol was the last one that Clarence Nash did Donald's voice for, and it was the first one that I got to animate. So it's the only one that we really worked on together, though I didn't voice any of Donald, but I got to animate Clarence on that one. Then the next one, Prince and the Pauper, I got to do a little bit of everything, which was a lot of fun for me because I got to record the voice and then animate the scene and then clean it up.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, of course, was a landmark in many ways, but most especially for Donald.
The main sequence with Donald was the piano duet with Donald Duck and Daffy, because that was such a big deal in that picture, was to put Warner Brothers characters with Disney characters. Joe Ranft and I, we storyboarded that whole thing. So Joe and I came up with the piano duet.
Let's talk about Three Musketeers a little bit. I think that film is just delightful.
Yeah, I think it's a fun movie. It's well done. The characters, they all look good. They all sound good. The story works.
And Donald is versatile. But now here he's in a Dickens and a Mark Twain, and then in an Alexander Dumas piece, and it works. It fits.
I really got to do a whole lot more with him in Fantasia 2000, where I worked on the Noah's Ark thing, and did a whole sequence where he's on a bungee cord of animals, like dangling from the Ark, and the crabs crawl up on his rear end and pinch him, and then he flies back up into the Ark. And I did a sequence where the Ark's leaking, and he runs in and almost slips and falls down, and that was a lot of fun to do, just those few little scenes.
I think that was a great thing that they did in Fantasia 2000 to give Donald his own segment, because Fantasia 2000 is kind of an addition to, a flip side of the original Fantasia. And of course, Mickey has a famous scene in that film. And I think the feeling was Donald has to have his moment.
Good morning, Mr. Duck.
Just told me Donald, Toots.
Yes, Mr. Duck.
What's first on my schedule, Tootsie?
Your fan mail, Mr. Duck. It's on your desk.
Oh, thank you. Up. That's not up. Boy, am I popular.
He was really the king of the stars on the Disney stable. Donald, was a character. Donald was a character actor for Disney. So they can put him in all sorts of situations, and they always knew they could get a laugh.
Yes?
Whoa, Donald is getting very impatient.
Put Donald on. As I was saying, folks, Donald's the pride and joy of our studio. A versatile character who can play any role assigned to him. In fact, he's the Gable of our stable.
Wow.
Yes, Donald, did you want to say something?
No. Go right ahead, pal. Don't let me interrupt.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow.